Hi everyone. This is going to be a bit different. Last year, I got married. No, I didn't. That's not true. It was 3 years ago. Feels like a year. Time flies when you're having fun. My wife is actually here, so far that is going all right. Same wife. You can see, here's a picture of our wedding day. I tried to keep it classy. But I'm not going to tell you a story about our wedding. I'm going to tell you a story about the stag do before it, bachelor party, if you're more used to that term. So the concept of this stag do was the remotest pub on the British mainland. Actually, the pub had been in the news the year before because the owner had 50 illegal guns. So we knew we were safe going there. It happened to be on a little spur of land on the west coast of Scotland called Knoydart. If anyone knows Scotland very well, it's very beautiful. You can only get there by boat or by foot. So this is going to be a slightly interesting experience from nose to tail, and it was. So we got our flight to Glasgow, a bus to the local port, and then a boat to the stag do. And the main focus of the main activity on the Saturday was a walk, a little stroll, an hour tops. Little stroll up to a hill, look at the beautiful Scottish countryside, whiskey tasting, packed lunches, easy. It's important to know that the demographic of this stag do was pretty much exclusively office dwellers, largely unfit. Many people hadn't been north of Watford, let alone Hadrian's Wall. So a little walk was fine. Everyone was comfortable with that. One example of this, a friend of mine, when told we were going on a walk, brought his football boots. That was the most outdoor pair of shoes he owned. So you can get a sense of where we're going here. Unfortunately, we experienced some churn on that walk, and I'm going to take you step by step very quickly. It turned from a gentle stroll into something slightly different. The first hill came. Everyone was excited. This is great. Stag do's a bit different. Then we got to the top of that hill, and there was a full summit. I'm not sure if you know what a full summit is, but basically it means you think you've got to the top, and then you realize you absolutely definitely haven't got to the top. So this was the view that we had on the start of our walk. Things went uphill from there. So, as we go up this hill, more and more people start to go, I'm not entirely sure, but I might just have my lunch here, actually. Can you pass me one of those bottles of whiskey, and we'll just play frisbee a bit easier? Actually, the correlation between smokers and the people that dropped off was very interesting for those statos out there. The first 25% of drop-offs were the smokers, the 4 smokers. So, don't smoke. That's the point of this talk. Not. But we got through our sandwiches, we got through our whiskey. We eventually got to the top. Reality was, it took us 6 hours. Fine, we all survived. Everyone came back down the other side. We jumped in the water and then had a barbecue, and it was all good. But I was thinking about that adventure the other day because that mountain is going to become my metaphor for the rest of this talk, so hold on to that. Everyone has a mountain to climb, or maybe mountains layered on mountains, and there'll be full summits along the way. And 18 months ago, I started climbing a new mountain, a metaphorical mountain, and I'm going to tell you about some of the full summits that I kind of experienced over the last 18 months, and maybe some of the things that I've learned. And when I talk about it, it's going to be about starting a company, but if there are like 4 people for whom that is directly relevant to. So imagine whatever mountain you want, and that could be your promotion at work, it could be your career in general, it could be starting a family, it could be getting fit. All of those things count. So hopefully the things that I'm going to talk to you about, if you apply that, think of a mountain right now, and then apply that, then hopefully it will stay relevant to you wherever you are. But if you do want to start a company, we can talk more directly about that afterwards. So, my first full summit. I'll set the scene of the start of this adventure. I was sitting at my desk at Deliveroo, and my calendar was full of blue. And I don't know if other people have changed the default color on their calendar when they're using Google Calendar, but for me it's always been blue. And that blue, that hex code, none of these are real people. So I just made this up. They're not actual meetings. It doesn't look like a calendar very much, in fact. But this was basically what I was looking at. When I woke up every Monday morning, I'd look at this calendar and I'd think, not much fun, don't really know what some of those meetings are, most of them maybe even. To go back just about 12 years, in fact, when I first graduated, I started a magazine for creative graduates, and it was effectively an excuse for me to swear a lot and do my own design work when no one, as a junior designer, would give me anything particularly interesting to do. It lasted about 5 years. We printed about 15,000 copies of our magazine over the various issues. We had a lot of fun, organized a lot of raucous events. I got to do loads of swearing. So, when you're young, swearing is the absolute best. I wasn't allowed to swear as a child, so I had to get all that out. But I look back on that time, which was kind of the most meaningful time in terms of my personal development that I could think of, and the thing I was most proud of, even though we never made any money. It was never meant to be, a business, any of that kind of stuff. It was just a lot of fun, and we got to stick pegs on a guy's face. But I was looking at my calendar now, and I was thinking, I'm just a meeting guy. Like, what is this? I want to do something different. So I thought, you know what? It's time to do something about this. I'm going to start climbing my hill. And then very shortly, probably a month, 2, maybe, Lambos, exits, TechCrunch, all that kind of stuff. That's going to be mine. I actually had 2 friends who were thinking about the same thing. One was at Uber, another at Palantir, 2 companies that have been in the news recently. But they were thinking the same thing. And one was a product manager, one was an engineer, I was a designer. We were like, dream team, Galacticos. Where could we go wrong? With those companies on our backgrounds and all our product experience, we're going to build the next big thing. And really, what I was thinking was, I'm excited about having done that. I want to be able to tell the story of having done the startup and gone through all those things. I'd been parts of teams, even the first employee of teams that had done that, but I'd never done it myself. I wanted to do that thing and to be able to say that I'd done it. So I quit my job. On the last day at Deliveroo, there was a Q&A with the whole tech team, and I was invited on stage to talk about the startup and how I was going to build something new. And I was really confident about the fact that I was going to change the world. I was going to build tools to help gig economy workers aggregate their work so that they could get a fair cop, build sustainable careers. And everyone was like, yeah! And then 3 weeks after I left, we weren't doing that anymore. So there was the first egg on my face. We went through, as the 3 of us, we went through 5, 6, 7 more ideas. Landing pages for all of them, go out, test with the market, go and sit in coffee shops, all that good stuff. We even built a full MVP for one of the products, Highlight, which is the one that you see there, aggregating conference talks, very relevant. In fact, I talked to Mathilde at the time. None of them worked. And they didn't not work because they weren't good ideas. Probably a lot of them weren't good ideas, to be fair, but they didn't not work because they weren't good ideas. They didn't work because we couldn't agree what we actually wanted to do. And that was as a team. And I was the biggest issue. Very early on, my friend Sal, still very good friends with both of them, said, I want to be the CEO and I want to run the show. And at the time, I was like, absolutely fantastic. I don't want to do fundraising. I don't want to do any of that stuff. I want to focus on product. But then it became clear, maybe to them before me, that I did want to do that, actually. So big issues from my end. But fundamentally, one of us would keep wandering off. If one of us had the idea, the other one would be a bit less interested in it, and so on and so forth. So we just couldn't agree. We would spend whole afternoons talking about what to do next. And if you're in a team of 3, you should be building stuff, not deciding what to build. So 100 days after our startup was formed, I left. And that was the first full summit. I had imagined 100 days talking to VCs, raising the money, all the users, all that stuff. Already going for the rocket ship. And I had no team, no users, no money. I hadn't raised any money, and I was living off my savings, which, thanks Jonny from 2 years below, didn't have many of those either. So I was really stuck at that point. Fast forward a year, I do now have a co-founder, and Neil is fantastic, very talented. But the important thing that was also missing the first time that I had the second time was I knew what I wanted. So we were able to go into that conversation with me going, here are the things I like doing, here are the things I absolutely do not want to do. How do you feel about that? And he said, yeah, that's a nice yin and yang with me. We split the equity, but in terms of those responsibilities, we knew where we stood. Really important. So that first learning, find your climbing buddies. And finding your climbing buddies isn't like picking the most CV-talented people that you can find. In the context of getting married, I found, I'm not going to get cringy on there, but you also need to know that you're in the right spot to make that decision at that time. We'll edit that out, right? Okay, so full summit 2. I'm going off script. So, blank sheet of paper. What happens next? I realized that I have a list of spreadsheets. And when they say, when you find a spreadsheet, there's an opportunity to build a product to replace it. More complicated than that, I'm going to tell you right now. But these spreadsheets represented what good looks like in companies. So along the top, you have all the different positions in your company: junior, mid, senior, director, manager, all that kind of stuff. Maybe engineering, design, product. Down the side, you have all the different skills, attributes, competencies that might be expected at those levels. Everyone has the same spreadsheet. They look a bit different, but they are the same one. I found a whole load of them and built a little website to collect them all together. Fundamentally, those spreadsheets they don't work well enough. And this was a decision that I made. This was the spreadsheet that I was going to disrupt. So off I went, and I built this first version, and it was shared. Lots of people liked it. People said thank you. It was free, so it's easy to say thank you if it's free, frankly. But then I thought, no, I'm going to build on this. So that was in May. Built that in a day, really hacky MVP, and then spent the next 6 months building something that I thought was better. It involved writing about 20,000 words of content. It involved building a static site myself that people could spin up on their own on-prem, if you like. It involved zero onboarding process at all. I was the onboarding process. And I launched it with a reasonable amount of fanfare. Progression pack. Started selling in August, made about a dozen sales. It was a one-off, 250 quid, buy the whole thing, never see me again, that kind of deal. Made a few sales. Very quickly, it became apparent that it wasn't going to work. I don't know. It wasn't going to work because it was all one bundle of things, and people wanted to see what that bundle was going to be before they bought it. But then as soon as I gave it to them, they didn't need to buy it anymore. And it was also an issue because there was no way I was going to scale it. I was pushing to a GitHub branch for every single customer I got every time I wanted to make an update, and then they would be breaking it their end anyway. So there was no way I was going to be able to scale this. This thing that I thought was going to work absolutely was not going to work. And the only way to solve that was to rebuild it from scratch. So 6 months I'd spent doing this, and I had to start again. Again, remember, no job, unemployed at this stage. So I'm faced with my second false peak, and this time I've got to go around it. What I did was get my head down, find Neil, who's been a miraculous find as well, and build the next thing. And we started building it. Well, I started thinking about it in November last year. In April, we started getting customers on. And we had a first set of customers ready to go that we'd been promising, yeah, next month, next month, next month. And then we finally got them on then. So it's a big old haircut that I took at that point. A long wait to start making money again. What's interesting, and I'm talking to a bunch of people that build software, so you know this, but building stuff properly takes a little bit longer than building it in a way that it breaks the entire time. And I'd had to learn all of these skills. I'd had to learn how to write back-end code, for example, to even get there. So my big learning from that was, even though it took 6 months to do, and it involved quite a lot of swallowing my pride, I was no longer selling the product that I'd told everyone to share because I was selling it. A month or 2 months after I started selling it, it disappeared again and was no longer on sale. That's tough when you are your entire marketing team. You can't rely on someone else to sell it for you and then they take the hit if you disappear it. That's on you. But it was fine because it was actually the right thing to do. So, final one, Full Summit 3, which, very recent, was thinking that the skills that you have are enough to do all the things that you need to do when you're in a small team. So we built our product. Start playing this guy, one of my favorite non-high fives of all time. We started building our product and we went out to market. And we probably had a dozen customers that were ready to go on day one, so we got them on. That was fine. And that probably gave us a full sense of security, because then we sat back and we thought, right, let's keep building on the product. Let's improve things. We know there's loads of bugs. There's only 2 of us. We've got to crank on this and make sure that we're creating the best possible product. And then 2 months later, realized that our revenue hadn't grown at all because we hadn't been trying to sell it. So we went out to market. And I say to market, we haven't launched yet, but we went out to a wait list that we'd been building for 6 months and started talking to them. And I realized that I have no idea how to sell. I've never worked for a B2B company. I've never been I've been on the other end of a sales process and got frankly annoyed by the smarmy people. But I've never actually had to close anything. I've never had to really talk money. The difference between customer development and user research and selling, they are not the same thing, because at the end of a sales call, you have to progress the conversation. And you can friend zone them all you want, but you won't make any money, so it's wasting your time. So I had to learn this the hard way, because for 2 months in 2 months we made 1 sale, which is tough when you've spent a lot of time, at this point, probably 14 months, working on a thing, and then you make 1 sale in 2 months. There's nothing quite like the existential threat that you've spent the last 14 months building something that no one wants, especially when it's just you. So we went to market, we saw this issue, and then we thought, right, we've got to learn to sell. How do we sell? And we just started asking, after every sales call, how did that go? And you learn very quickly that the people that you're selling to are better at sales than you are. And quite often they will tell you, probably should have spent less time on that bit and more time telling me what I was going to do next. And don't be afraid to ask me for money. We have loads of money. And if I ask for it, it doesn't come back to me if no one likes. Who cares? It's someone else's money. Especially when you're talking to great big companies. They're happy throwing it up the chain and back down again. So the money conversation we were too scared of, and we were trying to sell too hard some of the other aspects, like going through every aspect of how the product worked. So all of that stuff, huge learnings. But I suppose the meta learning, if you like, is sometimes things are going to take a hell of a lot longer than you think. Sometimes if something feels slow and you're lacking a skill, you have to go and learn it. You can't just sit and say, well, I'm the product guy, so I'm never going to do sales, etc. Good news is we kind of cracked it a little bit more, a mixture of building different things in the product and going out and selling in a way that doesn't friend zone people, and so we get to a point. I can talk more about the things I've learned in the first 3 months of trying to sell at another time, but thinking about how long your mountain is going to take to climb and being comfortable with it taking a bit longer than you expect, or involving a different path, or being tiring and not every day being a good day is really, really important as well. If you anticipate those things, then you're much more likely to carry on going up the mountain, unlike the smokers who stop to play Frisbee. So, Julie Andrews, one of my childhood heroes, came from a musical family, so Sound of Music was on very regularly, has a great saying: all careers go up and down like friendships, like marriages, like anything else, and you can't bat 1,000 all the time. I've thought about that a lot in the last 18 months, because if I have a bad day, the company has a bad day. No one else is doing any work, so if I don't turn up, no one turns up. And if one week I wake up and I'm like, I don't really know what I'm meant to be doing this week, then things slow down. But it's okay. It's okay to have moments in your mountain, whatever your mountain is, where it's not going so well. That's fine too. You can still keep climbing, or if you even have to take one step back to go forward again, then that's also fine. So, just to recap on the things that I've learned. Walk with the right people for you. So that's finding people that will support you, champion you, but also knowing what you're going to ask of them and making sure that you're not being unfair and you're setting expectations in the right way. It's okay to go back down to find a different path. I've done that several times, and while it's embarrassing because your LinkedIn messages are no longer relevant and the links don't go anywhere, it is the right thing to do, and your future you will thank you. And the final one, if it works, there we go. Bring snacks and wear sturdy shoes. This is going to take longer than you think, and involve you learning things that you didn't expect to have to learn. So, when I think back to that mountain, and I think to those of us that got to the top and ate our sandwiches and drank our whiskey, that's louder now, isn't it? I think about the conversation that we had at the top. And from the top, we could see 10 other mountains. And everyone was pointing at the next one they wanted to climb. It was just a really nice moment. Everyone had been complaining about blisters and saying, why couldn't we have gone to Magaluf? And then suddenly, we're at the top, and everyone's excited about what we did, and excited to do it again. But it's really not about getting to the top. In order to get to the top, you have to enjoy every step up the way. The journey, this is getting cheesy now, I don't care. Every step up the way has to be a step that you want to take. And that doesn't mean it has to be easy, it doesn't even mean it has to be fun, but it does have to be a step that you want to take. So thinking about what contributes to enjoying every step of that journey and being very mindful of what that means to you is the only way to climb a mountain, whatever that mountain is. This final slide, 2 things to say before I show it. 1, don't be too mean in the questions. And 2, share with care on social media. Because I want to talk about the final song from one of my favorite films. And you should climb every mountain. I can't believe I'm doing this. Ford every stream. Follow every rainbow. If you don't know what this film is, this is weird. And that was me at the top, in only a nappy and a baby mask. And the less said about that, the better.